With graphics like that, this guy must work out. Alright folks, so this is how I assemble them. I get all the facial pieces, all the slats, the two sides. Usually I put the bottoms and the tops in there, but since these are kind of made a little different, I'm doing them a little differently. So what I do is I get them all laid out. Like this is all one tower, this is another tower, this is the middle. And then what I do is I lay the sides up. This is the coffee bar. So I started out with this 3.5 inch piece, and I'm using 1.5 inch staples. So I staple it in here and staple it there, which gets my two sides up. Then I put my facial pieces on. So this is my bottom 1.5. This is my side 1.5. My top 2 inch. So I got to have enough room for the Formica top to go over, and then my other side. What I do next is, now that I have the top done, I don't put the centers in yet because I'll use a Kreg Jig to screw those in. So I get this part done, and then what I do, make sure you line it up to where it's flush along the edge. It'll be a little off, well, mine is a little off, but I'm going to come through and sand this and fill this in. Since it's painted, it's not as important that these match up exactly perfect. If it was stained, you'd want these cuts to be precision, but paint's a little forgiving. So what I do once I get that together is I'll measure from the inside of here to the inside of the other side and get that measurement. Here is 44 5/8, because this is 23-30 seconds. They make the wood, they don't exactly make half or 3/4 anymore. They save a 30-second, which allows them to make more lumber, but makes it a little difficult when you're doing these projects because you're measuring down to that small of a degree, or that small of a measurement. So what I do is get the facial on. I know these are exactly 46 inches, these top and the bottom. So then I just measure what I've got left. I cut me a piece that's 44 5/8. Measure at the top, because you know this is exactly the size that you need it. So you measure the inside, get that measurement, and then you'll use that piece to square this up and tack it on the back. That'll not only help you square the cabinet, it'll also give you a nailer or a screw board to hold the cabinet to the wall. So at this point, I take the cabinet and set it up. And then I take my piece that I cut, which is right here, and I'll use it to make my back. So that'll help me square the cabinet. I'll just staple it in on each side, there and there. That'll get this good and square. I'll use your speed angle to check your corners to make sure the cabinet's flush. Like I said, I usually do this with the bottom and the top, or at least the bottom. But considering this is going to have a stack of drawers over here, and it's only going to have a bottom for half of it, and I'll probably put a divider in here. This is just the way I build my cabinet. So I do get all the measurements and do my exact figuring on my drawers and my doors and my facial pieces, and then all the slats from here on out, I'm just kind of measuring from the finished product to see exactly what size I need. And the big reason for that is considering the lumber's not exact, it's easier from this point out to just measure what you got, build your rough frame, and then measure your pieces from there. So I'll get all the cabinets put together to this point, put all the facial pieces on. This is how I do it. So I'll go ahead and assemble the other three, and then I'll come back and show you a little more about the next steps. Alright folks, so today I'm going to show you the next step in building this. I'm going to show you how to do these Kreg Jig holes. So I've already got one mounted. This is my centerpiece for the middle of my shelving unit. And the reason you do this, you can try to nail them in caddy corner. Excuse me. Very rarely works for the long haul. So when you put the piece in, something like that, you can try to staple them in, but they won't hold up over the long haul. So these holes, if I'll show you the back side, allow you to screw it into the face, like I've already done here. Allow you to screw it in, that way it's secure into the facial piece of the cabinet. And the way you do this is with a Kreg Jig. They sell them at Lowe's. I imagine Home Depot sells them as well. That allows you to get this angled hole in this. So that's the next step I'm going through. So this is the little kit that I bought. It comes with some paperwork, some pins, selection of screws, a bit, and then a pair of pliers. I think they had a kit that didn't come with these set of vice grips, but I bought the one that had it. And then a drill bit. So ideally you would put this stop on here and tighten it up. And I've got to loosen that up. Right in there. I've already been doing these, so I'm basically looking for the middle of this 1.5 inch piece of wood. So you'll set your, it's got a set of stops on it right here. Right here goes against the wood. You can adjust how far back you put your hole in. For these, I did them a 5/8 of an inch. This is really difficult to do with one hand. Let me get it set and then I'll show you what I did. There it is. You line it up about halfway, put the stop on, clamp it down, and you just run your drill bit in this hole to make that slotted hole and run it into the stop. You don't want it, you just want this part to go all the way through. You don't want this because it gives it a seat for your screw to go in. If you go all the way through to back in here, your screw will sink all the way through this piece of wood and it won't actually be secure. So stop, that's what the stop is for. That allows you to stop it just shy of getting into the bigger bit here. So I'll run these on all the boards and then I'll come back. Alright, I thought I'd show you what I got done. I Kreg jigged all of the slats like so. That one's too much, that one's too much. So, what I found with these is I went ahead and put in a middle board. This is the middle portion of the cabinet unit. So I made a third one of these. There's one on each side, 3/4. I put a 1/2 inch one in the middle. I basically cut the exact same measurements I did on this. So I put my 3 by 3.5 kick plate. And then I just accommodated and cut the back out to accommodate these boards that you're going to use to screw the cabinet into the wall. So I just cut out 3 inches. This doesn't have to be exact. It's nothing you're going to see. But you're going to need this in order to mount the rails for the drawer slides. So put this in the middle of this cabinet. And then you can see I haven't ran these screws in. I actually used my 1 3/4 staples. Got these level and just tacked them in. And then I'll come back and put screws in to tighten them up. And then beat the either beat them in or pull out the staples. You can kind of see some of them are exposed. But just to temporary tack them in. So that's what I had to do on this. On the coffee bar, I made a bottom for it. Like I said, from here on out, I kind of just measure everything as I go. So I measured the bottom piece and cut it. I think it was 22 and a half this way by 23 and a quarter. Then I cut, that's 1/2 inch. Then I cut another piece a 1/2 inch. Basically did the same thing here. Instead of being 3/4, I made my middle piece 1/2 inch. Since this is going to be a pull-out trash can, you don't want the trash falling in behind your stack of drawers. Plus, you need something to mount your drawer slides to for your drawers here. So, did the same thing here. Cut my 3.5 by 3 piece down at the bottom to make sure it fit the kick plate. And the only additional cuts I had to do was to cut out for this back 3/4 by 3, and there's a bottom 3/4 by 3 down there. And then I used 1/4 inch for the back of the cabinet, where the trash can's going to go. This is just to kind of help square the cabinet. It's kind of like the metal shelves you get from the store. That the more structure you put to it, the stronger the integrity of it gets. So when you're first putting your facial pieces on and everything, your cabinets are going to be a little flimsy, but it gets stronger as you start adding more wood. So I did my back piece, side or middle, bottom. So this portion's pretty much done. I still got to screw these slats in, but I'm measuring, I'm making sure these are good and level, putting a square on these as I'm going. I said, since this is paint grade, I've got a little forgiveness on these. When I get done, get to the next step, after I get everything assembled, I'll come in and sand these down smooth, fill in all the holes made by the staple gun, and finish it out. On these towers were a little more difficult. I'm probably going to have to come back and cut these. They're a little short. Granted, you can measure everything out on a piece of paper, but once you put a saw to it, and I'm using a table saw, so unless you've got a really nice wood shop set up, I'm using what I've got. Some of this stuff you may have to go back and cut because you may be off an 1/8 here, 1/8 there. Could be off a little more than that. My problem's usually getting the, the gaps are too big. And your stain grade stuff's going to be even more particular. So I started putting these together. Found out those were a little off. Since this cabinet is so tall, I went ahead and put the bottom of my upper cabinet in. So this is the bottom. This will be a double set of doors, if you remember the picture. I used some of my 1-bys that I had cut, 1 by 3/4. Tacked those in, put a level on this and made sure it was level. Tacked it to here. I used 1 and 3/4 inch staples, and they did not come through. So I put them on there, put a level on it, and then cut a 1.5 inch piece here, and then put a level across here and a level forward and backwards to make sure it's flush. After that, I cut a 1/4 inch piece to square the back of the cabinet. This is just the back of that individual piece. Used small pin nails, I think 1 and 3/4 nails here. You don't want to use the staple gun unless you've got it set down really low. You'll blow all the way through this stuff. So I just used hammer and nails for these. Did the same thing for this tower, same principle. So now my next step is going to be basically coming in and probably cutting these 1 by 1 and putting these in. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm basically tacking all these in with the staple gun. I've already got them Kreg Jig, so all I got to do is come back in and put my screws in on the back side to secure those. As you can see, if you just use nails, even if you toenail in here and toenail up through this way, these will eventually start moving on you, especially if you've got a center drawer slide where your drawer has a slide instead of on the sides, it's in the middle. it puts a lot more pressure on this board. It'll never hold up. So that's that portion of it. Like I said, I've already got my shelves put together. Now it's just going to be coming in and securing all my slats. After I get all these in, I'll basically be ready to start mounting my 3/4 inch that I'm going to use. This basically almost exactly 3/4 inches here. And I'll put a piece all the way back through. That way I've got something to mount my drawer slide to. And then I'll stick my drawers in each one of these. Make sure they open and close good. And then the step after that, of course, is going to be sanding it down, priming all of it, and painting all of it. So coming along, slow process. So let me know if you got any questions. Thanks.
This guy needs to be a poster child for birth control. If you like that video, hit subscribe.